To most people stationed at Camp Sentinel, Specialist Ava Ramirez was just another face behind a desk. She organized rations, tracked fuel routes, and logged the never-ending paperwork that kept operations moving. Soldiers breezed past her without a second glance. They called her just support. It wasn't meant cruelly, just casually dismissive. She wasn't the one storming compounds or riding convoys through IED zones. She wasn't the one in the spotlight. She was background that Ava didn't mind. Not really. She wore her uniform with quiet pride. Her boots were always polished. Her workspace immaculate. While others griped about KP duty or the dry chow, Ava stayed focused. The rhythm of logistics, predictable, detailed, controlled, was her armor. Let the others have their action. She preferred order. But beneath that calm surface, there was more. Late one night, a transmission buzzed through the classified comms terminal in the logistics tent. The encryption level was far above what any regular personnel would receive. The message wasn't addressed to anyone on the manifest. It was marked, eyes only. When the officer on duty flagged it for command, protocol kicked in, but before they could escalate, Ava stepped forward. "I'll take it," she said calmly, holding up her ID badge. The lieutenant frowned. "This isn't your clearance level, Specialist." She stared at him, expression unreadable. "Check again." A pause. He tapped in the access code. His face changed. Wordlessly, Ava took the drive, walked to her bunk, and locked the flap behind. Her dot inside, she opened the brief. Lines of text, code names, coordinates. Embedded among the words was a single line in red. Calcine. Valkyrie. Asset status. Active. Recalled. Ava sat still. Her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly, not with fear, but recognition. It had been years since she had spoken the name aloud, since she had operated in the dark corners of the world, where orders came without rank and decisions blurred between survival and sacrifice. She had buried that life, changed identities, folded herself into the support role to escape the ghosts she carried. But ghosts, it seemed, never truly died. She shut the laptop. Outside, the wind howled through the desert, kicking up dust like smoke. The stars over Afghanistan burned like eyes. The next morning, no one noticed anything different. Ava handed in her daily report. Sorted medical shipments. Confirmed a resupply schedule with a lieutenant too busy flirting to care. But in her locker was a new patch. A raven embroidered in silver. Tucked beneath it, a burn phone, a black keycard, and a slip of paper with 3 words. Prepare for recall. That evening, a young private named Taylor stumbled into the comms tent, bloodied from a minor scuffle. Ava wrapped his arm and smiled gently as he winced. "You're tough," she said. "Not like you," he joked. "You're probably the safest person on base. Desk duty, right?" Ava chuckled. "That's what they say." Behind her, the encrypted channel buzzed again once. Then silence. She turned, her face momentarily shadowed in the red glow of the monitor. A password prompt blinked. She entered a 16-digit code from memory. The screen changed. Mission briefing. Classified. Target. Unnamed warlord. Status. High priority. Requested. Operative. Valkyrie. Ava Ramirez. Just support. To everyone else took a slow breath. She stood up, her posture suddenly more precise, more dangerous. She walked to the supply closet and opened a hidden case beneath the floor panel. Inside, black boots, reinforced vest, tactical gloves, and a patch with no flag. She zipped it shut and whispered to herself. Time to go back. Asterisk, the base was buzzing with rumors that no one could explain what happened 2 nights ago when a drone dropped a black case directly outside the comms tent. No markings, no signature, Just a retinal scan pad and encrypted lock. Within minutes, the case was gone. And so was Ava Ramirez. She returned the next day, like nothing had happened, typing, quietly at her station with her hair tied up in the same neat bun. But people were watching now, especially since she somehow managed to reroute a missing fuel convoy that had been stranded for over 14 hours. Command never issued that order. Someone did, and it saved over 60 personnel on the forward line. Who? Told the chopper where to land? A corporal whispered. I think her, someone replied. Support girl, Ava. Her? That desk jockey? Someone else leaned in. You ever heard the name Valkyrie? That's when the whispers began. A legend floated across different fobs for years. A woman, never named, who pulled off an impossible rescue behind Taliban lines. The only American operative ever confirmed to have breached an al-Qaeda stronghold. Alone and made it out with every hostage alive. Her voice had been recorded in encrypted comms. Calm, cold, surgical. Cody name, Valkyrie. Until now, no one thought she was real. Back in the operations tent, Ava calmly input coordinates into a logistics grid. A medic burst in, frantic. An aid convoy had taken the wrong turn near an unstable checkpoint. No time to wait for orders. Ava looked up once, nodded, and made 3 calls. She coordinated the air support, hacked into the inactive GPS beacon, and redirected a nearby drone to scan the terrain. 10 minutes later, the convoy rolled in safely. Who gave the orders? Asked the duty officer. No one answered. Ava returned to typing. Captain Hernandez watched from a distance. He'd served in Iraq and seen special operatives before. He recognized their silence, their calm, the eerie sense that they'd already mapped 100 ways out of every room. That evening, he invited Ava to his office. She arrived precisely on time, expression neutral. Specialist, he said, tell me, how did you know where the convoy was headed? She paused. I didn't. He raised an eyebrow. I knew where they shouldn't be. Pattern analysis. And who taught you to read battlefield patterns? She met his eyes without flinching. Experience. From behind a desk? No, sir. A long silence filled the room. Have you ever heard the name Valkyrie? He asked. I've heard stories, she replied evenly. And are you one? Ava smiled, just barely. I'm support, sir. He dismissed her, but the gears in his mind were turning. Later that night, the encrypted terminal in the restricted comms bay flashed with a red icon. A ping from Langley. One phrase lit the screen. Valkyrie. Green for Operation Phantom Echo. S2 soldiers on overnight duty saw the alert before Ava arrived. One stepped back as she approached. She said nothing, typed a 6-digit clearance code, and the alert vanished. No fanfare. No orders. No discussion. Just action. The next morning, personnel noticed something strange. Ava wasn't at her desk. Her gear was gone. Locker empty. Paperwork filed. The chair pushed in, but no one asked questions anymore. A mechanic glanced at the empty seat and muttered under his breath. Valkyrie. Beside him, a young private whispered. That was her? The mechanic nodded. She never needed a rifle to win wars. As the sun rose over the Kandahar Mountains, somewhere far from Camp Sentinel, Ava Ramirez suited up in black gear. No name tag, no rank. Just the silver raven patch on her shoulder. She stared into the mirror. She wasn't hiding anymore. The explosion shook the ground like a thunderclap from beneath. At 0300 hours, Camp Sentinel was rocked by a direct rocket strike. Sirens screamed as soldiers scrambled for cover. Smoke blackened the sky. Tents ripped apart, and burning debris rained down like hell had opened its jaws. It was chaos. The comms tower collapsed first. The med bay took a hit next, trapping 3 personnel inside. Screams echoed in the dark as another missile slammed into the motor pool. Radios were dead. No chain of command. Just confusion, shouting, and blood. And amid it all, Ava Ramirez moved, not away from danger, into it. Wearing only her fatigues and no armor, she darted through the smoke toward the collapsing med tent. 2 soldiers tried to hold her back. Are you insane? It's a kill zone. She didn't stop. She didn't even answer. She reached the rubble with a crowbar in hand and tore away burning canvas and splintered beams with inhuman focus. 1 medic was still conscious, trapped under a steel support. Ava didn't hesitate. She lifted it enough for 2 Marines to drag him free, ignoring the searing heat that blistered her palms through her gloves. They would later swear they saw. Her walk through fire. Once the wounded were safe, Ava disappeared into the motor pool, again without orders. She rerouted a parked Humvee, rewired its cones, and tapped into a buried fiber link she had memorized months ago. It was just enough to bounce a signal to the nearest satellite, calling for emergency medical evac and confirming no further missile waves were detected. Within 17 minutes, support choppers were inbound. The captain arrived on scene, stunned to find the damage already being triaged. Burned-out soldiers looked up at Ava like she wasn't quite human, not just for her actions, but for her calm. Her eyes were focused, cold, calculating, like she'd seen worse and already knew what came next. You're supposed to be in logistics, the captain said, watching her reset the drone signal repeater. I am, she replied, wiping soot from her brow. That afternoon, a sealed digital memo arrived at base command. Eyes only. The captain opened it and nearly dropped his tablet. Top secret. Operative Valkyrie, classified critical asset. Direct orders from Joint Special Operations Command. The timestamp? Dated 3 days prior to the attack. She knew. At least suspected. She hadn't said anything. Not a word. But she'd been preparing in her own way, quietly mapping access routes, catching supplies, building redundancies. No one had asked for It wasn't logistics. It was war planning. Over. The next week, stories spread like wildfire. A mechanic said he saw her hotwire a downed drone using scrap wiring. A Marine swore she predicted the rocket trajectory before the strike. Another claimed she read seismic data to pinpoint buried explosives using a coffee-stained map. All agreed on one thing. She wasn't just support anymore. She was something else. Someone else. A legend was forming. And this time, it wasn't a ghost story. She had a name. A face. A real place in their memories. And that name was spreading. Valkyrie. No one laughed when they said it now. She still walked among them, still wore her faded uniform and polished boots. But when she passed, people stood straighter. They moved out of her way without knowing why. Some saluted without realizing they were doing it, because something had shifted, not just the base, but the perception of what one woman could be, especially one they'd overlooked for too long. And Ava Ramirez? She wasn't hiding anymore. She was watching, preparing, waiting for the next call, because the fire hadn't broken her. It had revealed her. 2 weeks after the attack on Camp Sentinel. Ava Ramirez was gone again. No goodbyes. No transfer notice. Just an empty bunk and a silent locker. The only thing left behind was a sealed envelope addressed to the captain, marked with the Department of Defense insignia. Inside, her reassignment orders. The destination had been redacted, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. General C.M. Hollister, Joint Special Operations Command. The base fell quiet. Everyone knew now. She wasn't just support. She was something entirely different. And she had been reactivated. Ava stood inside a steel briefing room, half a world away. surrounded by some of the most elite operatives in the U.S. military. Rangers, Delta, Force, Marine Raiders. Men and women trained to carry out Black Ops missions that never made headlines. Missions that weren't supposed to exist. She wasn't in uniform anymore. Instead, she wore tactical black slide armor, reinforced boots, and gloves etched with the silver raven insignia of her old call sign. Valkyrie. They didn't recognize her at first. The operator sat in silence, studying the massive map on the screen. Satellite imagery of a walled fortress nestled between jagged cliffs near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. It was remote, impenetrable, guarded by one of the last remaining warlords not yet eliminated by drone strike or capture. Inside that fortress, 12 hostages, Americans, and NATO allies. Intel suggested they were being used for propaganda. One had already been executed on camera. Time was running out. The mission name, Operation Phantom Echo. This will be a ghost stop, the mission officer began. No formal entry, no drone support, no backup, no trace. He paused, then stepped aside. Command will be led by Valkyrie. The room went still. Ava stepped forward. At first, the room didn't react. One of the Delta Force sergeants blinked, confused. Waiter? Ava met his gaze. Yes, me. Someone else muttered under their breath. That's the support girl. ... Another. Voice older, harder cut through. That's not the support girl. That's Valkyrie. Show some damn respect. She began her briefing without hesitation. Every second was surgical. Every detail accounted for: entry points, topography, shadow windows, heat signatures, water lines, even the psychological profiles of the guards. Inside, Ava had mapped every possibility, every outcome. She had contingencies layered beneath contingencies. As she spoke, something changed in the room. The looks of doubt faded. Eyes narrowed with focus. No one spoke again. Later that night, she stood alone in the armory, inspecting her gear. Not for firepower, she carried little. Ava never relied on brute force. Her weapon was intelligence, precision, and silence. She believed in reading enemies before they moved, striking from the shadows, and controlling outcomes before a shot was fired. An older operative approached her quietly. Master Sergeant Ridley, 20 years in. He'd fought in places most people couldn't find on a map. I served with Valkyrie, he said softly. 6 years ago, Sierra Echo 9. Ava didn't look up. You were on extraction. You saved my life, he said. Didn't even know it until months later. She nodded once. Glad you made it. He hesitated, then saluted. Not out of protocol. Out of reverence. I'll follow your lead, Nom. When he left, Ava stood a moment longer, staring at her reflection in the glass pane above the weapons rack. This was who she had always been. Not the girl at the desk. Not the overlooked logistics tech. This. And now, they all knew it. At dawn, the strike team boarded the transport chopper. No markings. No lights. No destination listed. Ava was the last to step on. The pilot turned as she approached. Name? She paused, then spoke clearly. Valkyrie. The rotors thundered to life, and the sky swallowed them whole. The transport chopper dropped low, blades slicing through mountain air as the Afghan dawn crept over jagged ridgelines. Operation Phantom Echo had begun. 12 elite soldiers, handpicked for silence and precision, moved like shadows through the terrain. But they weren't leading. Valkyrie was. Ava took point, crouched low against the rocks, her eyes scanning every movement of the landscape. While others looked for enemies, she read patterns, dust trails, unnatural shadows, a shimmer of cloth, where no man should be. Her brain worked faster than most could follow. She signaled a halt. To anyone else. The pass ahead looked safe. Too quiet. Ava knelt, and pulled a graphite stylus from her tactical pouch, sketching a map in the dirt. Wind direction shifted, but there's no debris pattern, she whispered. Ambush markers, likely in the upper rock shelf. We circle east, no combs. Go dark now. The team followed without question. Minutes later, a sniper round cracked. Through the silence, from the exact position Ava had predicted. They would have been slaughtered. No one said a word. Just a glance, a nod. Respect earned in the dirt. At 0200 hours, they reached the outer wall of the warlord's first compound. Intel had suggested this was a transport hub, possibly holding guards or prisoners. Inside, they found neither. Just traps. The entryway was laced with pressure sensors. Ava disabled them with surgical care. A tripwire, nearly invisible, strung across the ceiling. She cut it with the blade in her boot while balancing on a metal support beam. No noise, no alarms. The team pressed on, only to find the rooms empty. Mattresses on the floor. Hot food still on the table. Someone knew we were coming, Ridley muttered. No, Ava replied. They knew I was coming. She examined the security system. The camera feeds had been disabled, not destroyed, just quietly disconnected. It wasn't a base anymore. It was bait. A burner phone buzzed in the corner. Most would have seen it as a threat. Ava saw it as a clue. She picked it up with gloved hands and slid it into her encrypted reader. Within seconds, she decrypted a hidden folder containing coordinates updated just hours earlier. The real hostages weren't here. They were deeper. In territory so dangerous, even drone pilots hesitated to fly over it. They hiked 6 miles on foot across enemy terrain. On the 4th mile, 2 insurgents appeared on a hillside. Ava didn't shoot. She waited, calculating distance and wind. Then she drew a laser pointer from her pack and aimed it briefly at a reflective surface behind the men. They turned, confused, and walked away. What the hell did you just do? Asked the young sniper behind her, redirected their curiosity. Ava replied, You didn't need to fire. No, she said. I needed to not be remembered. By dawn, they'd reached the perimeter of the real stronghold. Taller walls, tighter security, and a new complication: thermal sensors woven into the outer fencing. Ava looked at her team. This is where we go quiet. We separate. I go first. No way, said one operator. You're not walking in alone. She met his eyes. Yes, I am. Because if they see any of you, they shoot. But if they see me, they hesitate. Why? She adjusted her gear, pulled her hood up, and spoke with the kind of certainty that silences men trained to kill. Because they know my name. And then she was gone into the shadows, toward the heart of the enemy's fortress. Ava moved like a shadow through the enemy fortress, silent, unseen. Her breath shallow, heart steady. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. She knew what awaited inside: danger, deception, death. But she had no weapon drawn. Only a compact radio transmitter, her mind, and the reputation that had preceded her. Deep inside the compound, the tension was thick. Guards patrolled in pairs, weapons ready, eyes sharp. The warlord's men were trained killers, loyal to the last breath. But something was shifting. The usual bravado was replaced by nervous glances and whispered rumors. Then came the moment. Ava found a concealed room wired with an old shortwave transmitter forgotten by most, but perfect for what she planned. With deft fingers, she connected her radio, bypassing security protocols, and began transmitting a coded message. Her voice was calm, steady, and unmistakable. Valkyrie's here. The message rippled through enemy communications. Radios buzzed. Soldiers froze. Panic rippled through the ranks like wildfire. Did you hear that? Valkyrie. One guard whispered, voice trembling. Impossible. She's a ghost. But the fear was real. Orders came down to retreat, to abandon posts, to surrender. Ava didn't wait for gunfire. She stepped into the courtyard, hands raised, unarmed. Behind her, the hostages emerged from hidden cells. Free and alive. The warlord appeared stern, defiant, furious. You think your name will save you? He spat. Ava met his glare. No, my actions will. Within moments, his guards lowered weapons. Some knelt. The warlord, realizing resistance was futile, raised his hands. The fortress was silent. U.S. intelligence later confirmed that the warlord fled hours before the assault began, his forces abandoning him at the sound of the code name. When the operation ended, soldiers couldn't believe a single name had such power. Valkyrie is more than a call sign, one said. She's a force. The mission was hailed as a masterstroke of strategy and psychological warfare. But Ava remained quiet, letting her actions speak louder than words. In the shadows, she vanished once more until needed again. Weeks after Operation Phantom Echo, the world finally learned the truth. The mission was declassified, and news outlets everywhere broadcast images of Ava Ramirez, not as the quiet logistics clerk, but as the legendary operative Valkyrie. Photos of her in tactical gear, moments from the raid, and interviews with soldiers who had served alongside her flooded the airwaves. Across military bases and civilian streets alike, Ava became a symbol not just of strength, but of quiet determination and brilliance. Veterans wrote letters recounting how the support girl saved their lives without firing a shot. New recruits studied her tactics, inspired by the way she commanded without shouting, leading with calm precision in chaos. At Camp Sentinel, the atmosphere shifted. Soldiers who once ignored Ava now sought her out for advice and mentorship. Even commanding officers treated her with newfound respect, no longer seeing her as just support, but as a vital asset, a leader. A private approached her one afternoon, nervously saluting. "Specialist Ramirez," he said, "I just wanted to thank you. You're the reason I signed up. You showed me that strength comes in many forms." Ava smiled softly, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and humility. "I'm just doing my part," she replied. Later, the Pentagon arranged a private ceremony to honor Ava's contributions. She was offered the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration. Yet she declined publicly, saying, "This was never about medals. It's about every soldier who works behind the scenes, every unsung hero who keeps us safe." Her words resonated deeply. The ceremony became less about Ava and more about honoring those who support the fight. Without recognition. But behind the scenes, Ava was already planning her next mission. The world knew her name now, but she still preferred operating in the shadows. She continued training, building networks, and preparing for conflicts yet unseen. One evening, as the sun set over the base, Ava stood overlooking the training field. A young woman approached quietly, eyes bright with admiration. "Ma'am," she said, "I want to be like you, to make a difference." Ava looked down, placing a reassuring hand on the recruit's shoulder. "You can," she said. "Never let anyone tell you you're just support. We're the backbone of this fight." The recruit nodded, inspired beyond words. And in that moment, Ava realized her mission had expanded. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about changing minds, breaking stereotypes, and empowering those who had been overlooked. Her legacy wasn't written in headlines, that it was written in the lives she touched. Back at Camp Sentinel, life carried on as it always had, except for one undeniable change. Ava Ramirez returned to her post, the logistics tent where most soldiers still called her just support. But now, the words carried weight, respect, recognition. Her footsteps drew attention as she walked through the camp. Soldiers stood straighter, saluted her quietly. New recruits whispered her name with reverence. The legend of Valkyrie was no longer a secret. One afternoon, a courier handed Ava a sealed envelope, marked Top Secret. Inside was an official order. She was to command a new unit Valkyrie division, composed not of traditional frontline fighters, but medics, engineers, intelligence analysts, and logistical specialists. The overlooked backbone of warfare. Her mission: to prove that support roles were just as vital as combat, and that leadership came in many forms. Ava assembled her team, handpicking each member with care. She chose those underestimated by others, those who worked tirelessly in the shadows. Under her guidance, they trained relentlessly, sharpening skills that blurred the lines between support and combat. The first Valkyrie Division mission launched quietly. Without fanfare or headlines, they dismantled a network of insurgents, saved hostages, and secured a forward operating base, all while avoiding direct confrontation. Ava led from the front, not with weapons blazing, but with strategy, vision, and unyielding resolve. Her presence commanded attention. When enemies heard Valkyrie, they remembered the fortress surrender. The name echoed fear and respect. At a ceremony months later, a young soldier approached her, eyes wide with awe. "Ma'am," he said, "you showed me that strength isn't just firepower. It's heart, intelligence, and courage." Ava smiled. "Never let anyone tell you where you belong," she said, "because we all belong in the fight." As the sun set over the desert horizon, Ava stood watching the horizon. No longer just support, she had become a symbol of what true leadership meant: quiet, unbreakable, and fierce. The war was far from over. But one thing was clear. Valkyrie moved. The enemy surrendered not because of guns, but because of the name itself. And Ava Ramirez? She was ready to lead them all into the future.